on Senate confirmation. Look forward to having everybody here. Actually, we were just talking just a minute ago. I believe everybody on this committee is new for this. This is our first meeting of the year, with the exception of our Senate Minority Leader. So Senator Sykes will be our most senior member here, so she'll guide us as we go through this process. But this is a very unique committee. This is the only committee, to my knowledge, where the minority party actually is the vice chair of a sitting committee. And this committee also is very important, as it holds the constitutional powers of the full Senate to confirm nominees of the governor and the attorney general while the full Senate is in recess. So it's a very unique committee with a great responsibility, and so we take it very seriously today and appreciate everybody being here. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. As on the agenda everybody has in front of them, we have, I believe, 10 names. The first 5 are reappointments, and they are not required to appear today, but if they're in the audience and wish to speak, they're more than welcome. I'll just say your names, and if you want to come forward, if you want to say anything, you may. Alicia Sanchez, Member at Large, Kansas Humane Rights Commission. James Sakura, Capers Board of Trustees. Joanne Yoon, Capers Board of Trustees. Brandon Jones, at-large member, Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission, and Monica Holloway, Kansas Developmental Finance Authority. If any of those 5 are present and would wish to say a few words, they're more than welcome, but they're not required. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead with our first appointee by the governor for the University of Kansas Hospital Authority, Gordon Lansford III. Please come forward. Just we have your packet in front of us, so we know a little bit about you, but feel free to give us a little information, some of your experience, and why you're interested in serving on the board.
Thank you. No, there. Good? It's red. Can you hear me? Okay. Should I start over? My name is Gordon Lansford III, and I'm grateful to appear today for the opportunity to be appointed to serve the University of Kansas Hospital Authority. My family moved to Topeka when I was 9 years old, and I've been a Kansas resident ever since, now 45 years. I graduated from Washburn Rural High School right here in Topeka, and then Baker University down the road in Baldwin City in 1993 with degrees in accounting and business. I started my professional career with KPMG in Kansas City, where I spent 3 years on the audit staff and obtained my CPA certificate. Following that, I joined J. Dunn Construction Company in Kansas City, where I've been for the past 29 years. J. Dunn is one of the nation's largest construction companies, has been in business for 101 years. We have 5,000 employees. I have the honor and pleasure of being just the 4th CEO in 101 years and the first non-Dunn family member. I served as Chief Financial Officer at J. Dunn for 15 years, and now I'm in my 12th year as President and CEO. My primary focus as our CEO is on our employees and their families, our culture, our strategy, and the community impact that we have. We are viewed as one of the most civically involved companies in this region, and we try to replicate that in our other 26 markets across the country. I have served on many boards in the region for both nonprofit and for-profit entities, including stints as chairman at the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, Baker University, and the American Royal Association. In addition to continue to serve on those boards, I also currently serve on the boards of UMB Bank, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City, the Civic Council of Kansas City, and KC Common Good. I'm looking forward to and excited about the opportunity to use my experience in finance, strategy, human capital, risk, technology, and governance to benefit the University of Kansas health system. I'm passionate about the physical and mental health of my family and friends, our employees and their families, all Kansans, and others throughout the region and the country that come here for their care. Healthcare in our country is facing serious headwinds. Costs are rising and outcomes are not improving. I hope to have a small impact to improve healthcare access, costs, and outcomes through service to the University of Kansas Health System. Thank you for your service to my home state and for your consideration of this appointment. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lansford? All right, Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here and for reaching out to me over the phone. We had a lovely conversation, and I agree the cost of healthcare is exorbitant, and, we do need to have better outcomes. What do you think, as being a member of the board, you will bring to the table? I know you're finance, but will you elaborate just a little bit of what you think you're going to bring and help? With JE Dunn, you're focused on employees and all that. How can you shift that to this appointment and looking for the better health for Kansans?
Yeah, well, just in healthcare in general, I think we all need to be more responsible and accountable for our own health and focusing on wellness and preventive care. But, serving on the board of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, I've seen the industry from the payor side. I've obviously seen it from a patient side, and now I'm looking forward to looking through that lens from the provider side. And, I think there needs to be more collaboration amongst all those partners. Certainly, technology plays a huge role. That's advanced in terms of patient records and not having duplicate access and records and things like that. So I think just having those different perspectives, and not that I've learned a ton about healthcare through building hospitals, but we are one of the nation's largest healthcare builders. So I do spend a lot of time in facilities as well and around medical professionals. So I think just those broad experiences, my passion about it, I think I'll be a valuable member to the board. Thank you for the question.
Oh, thank you. And I do think that from being on the payer side and now the provider side is going to bring an interesting perspective to that, because I talk to providers and, there's this tension between, I think, payers and providers. And, I think collaborating and bringing those pieces together for better outcomes. So thank you.
Yeah, hopeful to do that. Thank you.
Other questions? Vice President Schomburger.
Thank you. That question's just raised a question in my mind. Do you intend to stay on the board of Blue Cross if you get this?
That is my plan for now. I recognize and disclose that there could be some conflict there, but I'm used to serving on boards and understand the governance around conflicts and prepared to recuse and abstain from any of those situations. But as I discussed with Senator Sykes, I think it's an advantage actually to drive collaboration between the payers and providers in order to, again, lower costs and drive better outcomes.
Well, as long as one provider isn't given preferential treatment over others.
Correct.
And insurance companies, it's my understanding, negotiate, they don't all pay the same. So I would hope that you wouldn't use your position with the authority to get a better deal for Blue Cross or vice versa.
No, sir, absolutely not. And that situation exists today. There's another member of both boards, and she's coached me on situations that have arisen, which have been very few, but how she navigated that.
Other questions? All right. Well, I really appreciate all your vast experience in the community. You've served on numerous boards and truly a leader in the Kansas City region and our state. So appreciate your work there. And, KU Med personally means a lot to me, as I've had a somewhat significant surgery there, and they are a great healthcare system, and I know the future is bright. And so appreciate your leadership and willingness to serve. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. We will hold on the appointments until the end if there's no objection by the committee. All right, next we'll have up Bob Kent, Director of Property Valuation. Please come forward and just, again, state a little bit about yourself, some of your experience, and why you're interested in serving in this very crucial role.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bob Kent, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to appear before you today in support of my appointment for the position of Property Valuation Director. I am a lifelong Kansas resident and grew up in the small northwest Kansas community of Norton. I attended and graduated Fort Hays State University in 1987 with a degree in finance. I currently reside here in Topeka with my wife of 27 years, Lynn, and we have 2 grown children. I've spent most of my post-education career years in public service, specifically in the area of property valuation and mass appraisal. After graduating college, a unique opportunity presented itself, and the timing seemed right for me to engage in the Kansas statewide property reappraisal effort. that was just beginning in this state. This is where I began my career, and I started working with a reappraisal company on a tri-county project in Norton, Graham, and Phillips counties. After a short time with the local reappraisal company, I accepted my first public service position as the Phillips County Deputy Appraiser and held that position for 2.5 years. I was appointed the Pawnee County Appraiser in 1990 and remained in that position for a year before joining the Division of Property Valuation in 1991. My tenure with the Division of Property Valuation has allowed me to serve in multiple positions, including significant tenure with the county assistance and compliance teams at multiple levels, the computer-assisted mass appraisal support team, which is the CAMA system support team, as an appraisal project coordinator, and my current position as deputy director, the position I've held since 2021. My work experience has allowed me to build numerous industry relationships and work closely with local officials to create efficiencies and improve the appraisal processes throughout the years. My experience in public service has been rewarding. And over the past 35+ years, I've had the opportunity to work with several administrations. I would continue my efforts to support the policies and the legislative efforts of current and future administrations. And I look forward to the opportunity to continue working on behalf of the people of Kansas and feel my appraisal experience will be an asset to any challenges we face together. I thank you for your time this morning, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kent? Senator Bowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kent, for being here this morning. Good to see you again. I want to speak on behalf of Mr. Kent here. Senator Klemp, Senator Tyson, and myself have been having some sort of informal meetings for 2 or 3 months now with Mr. Kent and his staff. So I have firsthand knowledge of his expertise. His staff is professional. They're knowledgeable. First class. We've had an opportunity to, again, spend hours and hours, literally, diving into property valuations in our state, learning about their computer system and how the taxation and valuation process works. So I can't think of a better nominee for this position than Mr. Kent. He's more than qualified, and we certainly are fortunate to have him step up for this role. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those comments. Other questions for Mr. Kent? Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here. Property taxes and evaluations, all of those, I will be happy. If anyone wants to move to Lenexa, our our property evaluations and assessments went down, so I was very excited about that. But what do you think is a solution for this? I mean, I think we have a supply issue and making with that affordability, but how do we increase our supply? What do you think is the best?
Well, I don't know. Increasing the supply is building, correct? Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of out of my realm a little bit. Supply and demand is a key component to property valuations, and certainly has an impact. But how do we increase building? I just feel like that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that. I think there needs to be more of that conversation of why those evaluations are so high in the property tax, because we have a supply problem and we don't have enough supply. So that's kind of inflating that. But just appreciate the candid conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Kent, I'm curious, other than the last 5 years, have you seen another time in your experience where we have seen such a rapid increase in appraisals in our state's history?
Not in my experience, not to the degree we've seen in the last few years. Post-COVID presented some real challenges for appraisers. We saw very rapid valuation increases. And I'd like to add, those increases they stem from market analysis. So these valuations are coming from sales that have taken place in the market. and being analyzed through different approaches of value. But to answer your question, no, I haven't seen that in my experience. Over the years, I think one could safely say that, trends kind of hovered in the 4 to 5% range. And during, it depends on where you're at, but during the post-COVID years, they were much stauncher than what we would normally see, yeah.
Thank you. Any final questions for Mr. Kent? All right, seeing none. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Kimberly Brown, public member of the Kansas Development Finance Authority. Please just give us a little about yourself and why you're interested in serving.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Brown, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to appear before you in support of my appointment to the Kansas Development Finance Authority and the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, where I attended Topeka Public Schools and obtained a BA and MBA from Washburn University. I've served in the financial services industry for over 35 years, with 30 of those years serving as an executive and leadership positions with security benefit. I've worked with the executive team developing the strategy for discussions with Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. I've also served as the Executive Program Management Officer responsible for strategic initiatives necessary to build out SE2, which is now called Xenia. I had the opportunity to manage our strategic relationships, technical and non-technical initiatives, vendors, and system conversions. In 2015, I launched Financial Mastery Consulting. As president of Financial Mastery Consulting, I provide educational workshops to families regarding retirement planning, college financing, and retirement investing. I've written a book called College Planning Made Simple, 5 Steps to a Debt-Free Degree, which is available on Amazon. And for 6 years, I served as an adjunct professor at Washburn University, where I taught in the School of Business, and I'm now an adjunct professor at Gallaudet University in their insurance and risk program. I've passed over 25 insurance exams in the financial services field, to include obtaining the Series 6, the Series 26, the FLEMI, and the Fellow Life Health Management Association Life Health and Claims designations. I am looking forward to applying my experience in the private and public sectors as a board member with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation and Kansas Development Finance Authority, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for that information. Is there any questions for Ms. Brown? All right, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. I'm just curious. I noticed that you have worked for the campaign of Shamicha King Sims. What kind of race was that?
Well,
Was that a state rep,
she was
Congress,
running for senator,
U.S. senator?
state senator, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, great. And the other one is, your sister is an attorney for the state of Kansas.
That's correct.
Where does she, which department or agency does she work for?
I'm honestly not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Brown? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much for being here and for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next up, we have Pamela Amar, Regent of the Kansas Board of Regents. Please come forward and just share a little about yourself, your experience, and why you're interested in serving on the Board of Regents.
Thank you, Chair Blasey, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. A little bit about myself. I'm Pamela Clancy Amar. I'm honored to be here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, attended Cape and Mount Carmel High School. I received 2 degrees from Wichita State University, one associate in science and dental hygiene and a bachelor's of health science. I also have a Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Denver College of Law. In my first career, I was in private practice, and I also was involved with the research program with Johnson & Johnson with the Wichita Public Schools. We worked with school children, grade school, and at the time it was called junior high. I'm kind of dating myself, now middle school. Then I went on to get a full-time job at the Sedgwick County Health Department running their dental clinic. And we had students from the WSU Dental Hygiene Clinic come through, and I supervised them and helped them with prophy and working with patients. I then had the opportunity to work at Wichita State as an adjunct clinical instructor in the dental hygiene program. During this time, I met Nola Fulston. Some of you may know her as one of our longtime district attorneys in Sedgwick County. Feeling I may have peaked out a bit in dental hygiene, I thought, well, I want to be just like Nola. I want to go to law school. So I got that opportunity. I also got the opportunity to be an intern with her for one semester of my law school. I learned pretty quickly I did not have the intestinal fortitude to prosecute criminals. I could not leave all those facts and details at the office, but I did like the trial work. So I went to work for a national firm doing primarily products litigation, but I really wanted to combine my love of science with law, and I wanted to do medical malpractice defense. So I shopped around and found somebody who I thought was the best. Went to him and said, I want to work with you, and we were partners for a very long time and tried many cases together. I've also been involved with a lot of boards. One hospital board I've been on now for almost 20 years, 2 foundation boards, nonprofits, and professional boards. Many times I've been the president or the chair. I've also, part of the boards, been at Wichita State. I've been involved out there not only as an alum, but because it's Wichita's university. And I have been on committees and worked with other people that have been gone to other schools, but it's not their alma mater, but they too want to see that as a university that thrives for the city. I find that I have a passion for education, which really started with myself. If I wanted to go to college, I was going to live at home. I was going to work and put myself through school. When I was accepted in the dental hygiene program, I was no longer able to work except Saturdays. So I had to take out loans. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not the smartest, but I wasn't the poorest kids. And at that time, there just weren't scholarships available. So following school, I did pay off those loans. But it was something that was in the back of my mind. And my husband gifted a scholarship in my name, and it is for a student that was like me, that sort of fell through the cracks and just needs a little extra help to be able to get through school and not have to hopefully have a lot of debt. I think I would like to serve the state as a regent with my background as a lawyer, serving on boards, just my life history and experiences, and just my affection for education. I'm an independent thinker, critical thinker. I can make hard decisions, and I certainly would like to help our state and our education process. Again, thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you for the introduction. Questions for Mrs. Amar. Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for sharing all this. A couple of things that stood out to me that you mentioned were mentorship and then the debt situation. And so how would that be applicable as you look at this position place? How could that be implemented? What would be the vision in that?
Well, what I would like first to do, I've sort of had a bird's eye view, if you will, a couple of hours over at the KBOR office. It's been a bit like drinking from a water hose. So I can't say that I am as adept in knowing about all their programs and everything. But I would like to see that there's a way that it could be education itself, some way or another, could be a little more economical. I can only speak from experience at the Wichita State, what I know about, and I do know that, and being on the foundation board, that we do have a lot of scholarships available all across the board for many areas, and I'd like to think that there might be something for someone. I can't speak completely about all the scholarships that are available or the assistance with education and payment, but I do know that's something that WSU has really looked at, especially for first gen students that just, are trying to get there for the first time. As far as mentorship, yeah, I believe in that. That's important. It's one thing that we do at Wichita State quite a bit. We have the applied learning. So either we have the business on campus and the students can work for them, or else we have partnerships with the businesses and the students can also work from them. It works really well. It's something that I learned like with dental hygiene and being in clinics and that applied learning. And I think that's important no matter what you choose to do.
Senator Bowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Amar, for being here today, and congratulations on your nomination, and thank you for your willingness to step forward. There may be nothing more important in our state than preparing our, educating and preparing our next generation and the next workforce group. I want to talk about and get your thoughts on a very specific situation here in our state, at a state university that you, as potentially part of the Board of Regents, an important decision you're going to have to make. And that is Emporia State University and President Ken Hush. And full disclosure here, I'm an Emporia State Hornet grad, and I know President Hush. But I remembered several years ago when he was hired, it was kind of a controversial hire. He didn't come from a traditional academic background, sort of came in from a business background into the university, and really, I got to tell you, I think the university several years ago was kind of trending in the wrong direction. The students' number, head count was trending down. There were some financial issues. And I think President Hush came in and applied more of a business approach to the university, maybe more so than a traditional academic approach. And he looked at, sort of degree programs and things. And for example, if we had a professor who wasn't really teaching a lot of students, so why do we need to keep that tenured professor around? I remember that was kind of controversial. He made some good decisions, I think. In hindsight, I think they were pretty positive decisions. The university is now out of debt, $19 million out of debt, I think, and he's announced his retirement. So the Board of Regents, you're actively, I would suspect, looking for a new president at Emporia State. So my questions are, do you think, would you be open to, again, considering the next president, someone who's not from a traditional academic background? Kind of second question, do you think that his approach to some of the university financial issues were the right approach? Maybe taking more of that business view than an academic view? Maybe third question, should we apply some of that business acumen to other universities in our state? Thank you very much. And if you're like me and can only remember one question at a time, I'd be happy to repeat some of those.
I think I got it. Okay, first, I welcome any qualified candidate. So that's who I hope that KBOR can look at. That's any walk of life in the sense that not necessarily academic, but also business, as long as they're qualified for the position. Let's see. The next one, I think that with finances the way they are, it's important that we take a look at everything. I will tell you that when I was at the KBOR office last week, I did ask to see the board books, which includes budgets, and there's 4 of them. So I haven't addressed or gotten through all of them, but I do think that there's always a tension when it comes to finance. And sometimes I look at it like a jigsaw puzzle, and you're just trying to get the right pieces in the right place. I've also known that, you can have anything you want. You just can't have everything. So we just have to figure out what our priorities are and the best way to use those. And your last question.
Do you think maybe we should ask our other universities to kind of consider this business approach that President Hush applied to Emporia State?
I don't know about whatever, and I'm not that familiar with President Hush's approach, but I do think that the universities will look at a bit of a business model as well, because while it's academia, it's also a business that they're running, and I think they're cognizant of that. But I know that it's a big job, and trying to properly run universities, and there's so many areas that you have to look into and consider, but I think it all comes down to trying to collaborate and prioritize.
Minority Leader Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Mar, for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you for elaborating. I was very intrigued of your shift from dental hygiene into law. So I appreciate. And I just last week I was at a conference looking at higher education policy, and so I think you will actually bring an interesting perspective to that because you've changed careers. So with lower birth rates and fewer people kind of going to college, but knowing that you're going to have some sort of other degree besides that high school diploma for the workforce. How do you think your kind of change in process or change in careers, kind of mid-level, will help bring that? And then how do we also make sure that we're upscaling and providing, those opportunities for, that second career to bring people through the process?
Thank you. I think that just some of my life experiences, I think that might be helpful. Anytime you are one person on a board, you can become involved, and everything's temporary, right? And so it's going to be, somebody new and people that you're going to collaborate with. And what's nice about that is someone's going to have a different idea, and you share ideas, and hopefully collectively you come up with a good solution. I think for students, any type of post-secondary education is important. And I would like to see them be able to do whatever they want to do, whatever their passion is. And if it's not an associate degree or a bachelor's, maybe it's a technical type degree. And so I see that it's the whole picture. And I like the idea that we're getting into schools, but I'd like to see us get into high schools maybe a little earlier and give students the tools, the information, and give them the accessibility, and inform them that we are able as a state to meet your needs. Did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think also making sure that we have businesses at the table and talking about that. I mean, mentorship or approaches like that. I think so many times, those entry-level jobs, it's saying, I need 3 years of experience, but it's really an entry level. So how do we make sure that we have that mentorship, internships, whatever, to bring that? So I'm excited for your perspective on the board. So.
Thank you.
I have a few questions for you. I know one of the board's goals, as I believe the legislature's goal, is to ensure that college is affordable for Kansas families. And I appreciate hearing your story about a lot of students who fell through the cracks on scholarships. So if you're confirmed as a regent of the board, what would be your priority to ensure that the Regents is taking that always into consideration? This last year, we increased tuition, I believe, in every university except for maybe one. I could be wrong on that. But the last several years, we've increased tuition. The legislature continues to appropriate additional funds, but the Regents also continue to increase tuition on the backs of students. So my question is, I guess, how can we collaborate, but ultimately as a regent, how are you going to be able to hold universities accountable to ensure that we could keep expenses low, to keep tuition flat or minimal increases?
First, I'm going to study that and learn more about it. I look forward to that, and I would probably be remiss to say I had a plan because, I don't at this point, but I can tell you that in any board, any business, even my law practice, I mean, you do have to worry about a budget, and you do have to figure out a way to make things work. I recognize that, there's only a certain amount of dollars, and so we're just going to have to figure out a way to do better with that. I look forward to having conversations with the other regents and seeing if we can find some innovative, if necessary, ways to tackle the budget.
Senator Bowser mentioned Emporia State as an example. They've made some hard decisions that have not been popular. They've been in the press, but they've been necessary for the long-term financial success of the institution. And so I have a concern long-term as the state and all states across the nation continue to see tighter budgets and declining revenues, or at least not keeping at pace with expenditure increases. And so if there's ever a recession down the road, historically, Kansas always cuts higher education first. And so my question is, as a regent, how are we going to empower university presidents and the chancellor to make some of these hard choices to ensure we're positioning our universities for long-term success? Emporia State, I believe, did some resizing, which was not popular. I went to a private university, and they've done a lot of similar cuts to ensure they survive. And so it's happening across many markets, but I don't know if all the universities are implementing such policies. And so how are you going to empower university presidents and the chancellor to make some of these hard decisions that are not popular?
Well, I will say that I think we need a little more collaboration. We have a perfect example of Wichita State and University of Kansas coming together with the biomedical, and that's new. I mean, that's just not been done, where you've had two universities on the same campus, but to have them in the same building and be together. And I'd like to see more of that. I don't know that we'll be able to do more of that, but I think those are conversations that we need to have, and how do we share? I know we're doing shared things even at Wichita State, that's the only one I can speak of, but if you're in the health program, you may be in the same class with somebody in engineering or business, and trying to consolidate that so we don't have the same classes going on in 3 different buildings. And so I think we're going to have to come up with some ways to work together. Because the bottom line is we're all in this for the same reason. We want to see great education for the people of Kansas. And so we're just trying to figure out the best way to do that.
I agree, and I think it's an excellent answer. I think we're always looking for efficiencies and how we can help affiliate. I know some of the universities have acquired some of the technical schools. I don't know if there's any conversations about community colleges and universities partnering to share name branding, but I know senators that have community colleges in their district are really feeling the financial pinch with property taxes. And so it's a big issue. And we as a state have to make hard decisions in this decade to ensure the financial success long-term of all of our communities and our higher education. So I appreciate your willingness to serve, and you're answering those questions. We'll go back to Senator Sykes.
I just want to make a comment because you brought it up, but at that same conference that I was in last week, they were actually applauding Kansas for some of that collaboration and saying that
great.
we were doing what other states should be doing. So thank you for highlighting it and for the question, Senator
You're
Blasey.
welcome. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your willingness to serve. Appreciate being here.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, and last but not least, Regent Kathy Wolfmore. So she's being reappointed by the governor for a full term. She just kind of got on the job, I think, 4 months ago, and so she's kind of gone through the process, has a little experience, kind of pull the curtain back a little bit, see what it's like inside. So I asked Regent Wolfmore to return just to kind of answer some questions that I know I've been asked by members of the Senate and the public. And so, but before I do that, I don't know if you have any comments about your experience so far on the Board of Regents, or anything you want to share with us?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to be here today, to all of you. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I've appreciated this opportunity to be on the Board of Regents. In my short tenure of 5 months, I realized I know very little and I have much to learn, but I will tell you I'm willing and I'm working very hard. And already I believe the Regents have accomplished quite a bit this past year. We've continued the implementation of our student success initiatives, and why that's so important and why I bring it up every time I talk to anyone is because that's something we have today that was missing years ago. That is a system by which there's improved advising for students, but also there's a data-driven method to catch students when they're failing. No one fails all at once. Years ago, people just dropped out. And I can't think anything more demoralizing than dropping out and having to pay student debt on a degree that you never achieved. So we wrap their arms around them in different ways at different universities, put the resources around them, and allow them to graduate. I think that's so good for the student, but it's also a good use of taxpayer dollars. So those dollars just really haven't gone down the drain. The other thing that I think that I've been impressed with, I didn't really know it was going on, and it's going on at all universities, but when I visited Wichita State early on, I was introduced to what was called applied learning. So every student at Wichita State has to have, as a part of their degree completion, an applied learning. So that may mean if you're if you're learning to be a engineer or an aviation career, you work on the job while you're completing your degree. That does really several important things. How many times have you heard someone who came out with a degree, started to work in their field and said, hey, this isn't really for me? That really prevents that from happening for the most part. The other thing is it helps students stay in Kansas. So many of these students, I'm told, who attend Wichita State and work maybe at one of the aviation companies, the engineering companies, they're trying out the employer's trying out them. More than likely, they're going to end up staying in Kansas, and that's something that we've long worked on. I remember in the legislature is keeping the students that we pay to educate in the jobs that we so desperately need in Kansas. And the third thing about that is that more than half of those students in applied learning, it's a paid position. So they're actually reporting to their president, Richard Muma. That is just a godsend for many of the students who may not live on campus, but have to pay for transportation, living expenses, and that sort of thing. So the applied learning has really been something really special. And you asked the questions of the earlier conferee about ways we can lower costs. And I think that's the future of education, and I think that will help lower costs. There is a 10.2% increase in on-time graduations over the last 5 years. That's another way you lower costs. I remember for a while it was popular that everybody was doing the 5-year plan. They liked college so much they wanted to stay one more year. Well, trying to get people through college in 4 years, I mean, you can do the math. That's a significant savings in what they'll be paying for their higher education. And there's also been 3 consecutive years in which a percentage of the graduates in the system stay in Kansas after graduation. So there's a lot of positive things going on. I know there's a lot of challenges, and you have questions for me, but I just thought I'd start out with the positive.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, and thanks for being here. Are there questions for Regent Wolfmore? Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thank you for sharing that. Could you speak to a little bit with all the maintenance things that have to be taken care of right now across the universities? We're talking some major money, and then actually demolition as well, and where you're at on that. And you know, we've had a lot of salary increases I've seen, and how do we balance that out? And what, now that you've been there for 6 months, could you just speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So first of all, I'm remiss in not thanking the legislature for the money they put into the higher ed system last year. It was much appreciated, and I think about 31 million of that was, we affectionately call it the Billinger bill, because he advocated so hard for it. I think it's 31 million they put in deferred maintenance, and I can't remember the percentage, but the universities have a matching portion of that because they do recognize that, just like at your home, if you let a building crumble, the maintenance is going to continue to cost you more and more, and then eventually even demolition is very, very expensive. So that is an initiative that we're working hard on, and trying to use those funds that you have appropriated to us very wisely for that very reason.
Other questions? All right, just a few quick questions. You know, I know you've been on the job for a few months, so you're still trying to get your hands over the job. And so KBOR historically in the last few years has been requesting substantial increases of funding, which I think there's some disconnect between the legislature, which is trying to rein in funding or spending, and KBOR's request for funding. How are we, as you're probably going through the process now for next year's budget, you know, how is the regions taking account, you know, the legislature's desire to start reining in spending, as well as ensuring that the universities are being held accountable to making the right efficiencies and cuts that are needed, that are necessary to ensure financial stability?
That's a fair question, and I appreciate it. So I think they're, not to criticize any past regions at all, wonderful service, very committed to their job, but maybe there's a bit of a disconnect, what's going on in the Kansas budget and maybe what the region's request for. I think the ultimate answer to that is a closer relationship between the regents and the legislature, and we own that. We had in our retreat, I'll let you all know that we had a session on, I kind of led a session on working more closely with our representatives and senators. You're on the front line. You hear from your constituents every day. We can benefit from what you know. A senator happened to mention to me that we see appointees when they come and ask for a vote in meetings, and then we never see them again. Well, we need to correct that. And I think that working together, there can be a better partnership, and we can be more aware of the climate in the Kansas legislature, and I'm talking about the budgetary climate in particular. So we need to be more aware of that, and our asks have to be in line with what that climate is. But it's also our responsibility when we see a very urgent need or a very important need that we bring it forward to you and do our best to convince you to fund it. That's our job also.
Yeah, absolutely. And in preparation for today's meeting, I went back and looked at several of the KBOR minutes, meeting minutes, just to see what the discussion's been in the last several meetings. And it seems that every vote that's ever taken is unanimous, and which is not a problem, because we certainly don't want troublemakers. We have troublemakers in the legislature that like to just throw bombs and stir fires, and we don't want that. But how are we ensuring that every member of the region is independently thinking, being a leader, and bringing different perspectives? Is there a lot of discussion at the regions to tackle some of these big complex issues, or is it kind of a, we're all here to get along and just vote yes on whatever we're told to vote yes on?
You know, I can only speak to the few months that I've been there. And so in the executive sessions or sessions that I've been, there is a lot of discussion behind the scenes that's not always, we're not always aligned. Let's put it that way. I think the best decisions come about when every voice is allowed to be heard. After you talk about it enough, I always believe like the right answer services. And I think probably we need to do even more of that at the regions, is make sure that every voice is heard. Because, you know, as I look around the regions table, every single person brings something a little bit different. I mean, I'm certainly not the higher education expert by any means, but there are some on our board. And so I think that the more we listen to all the voices at the board, the more successful we're going to be. And the more we come over and visit with you, more we'll be in your world and understand what your needs. I remember being on appropriations and being hit from, seemed like 1,000 requests from around the state. I know there weren't that many. And so you have a tough job, and we know you have to balance that. And so we'd like to be helpful for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the last topic I want to talk about is a topic that's been discussed nationally and a great deal in the legislature this last session, which is DEI. Recently, members of the legislature received a letter from a student at a particular institution in the state of Kansas that claims that DEI is still happening, despite the universities certifying to the state finance council that it is no longer happening. I believe the federal government is issuing mandates that universities must comply also with new guidelines, or there's a threat to loss of funding, which I believe we're seeing at Harvard and Columbia and other universities across America. How confident are you that the regents, universities are all complying with federal law and the new state law that was just passed this last session, Senate Bill 125, that DEI is no longer in practice at the university level?
Well, I'll answer that as best I can, and to tell you what we've done, knowing that ultimately we're responsible, the buck stops with the Board of Regents, and I understand that. But today, what we've done, we made it clear this isn't a rebranding effort. This isn't just cosmetic. These are actual changes that had to happen. We, on June 18th, the board office set guidance to the general counsels at each state university and explicitly told them what was required by the law. And we mirrored the language that actually was in the proviso, so there could be no misunderstandings about what the law is, and we do intend to follow the law. The guidance directed state universities to be in compliance by July 31st. And the Secretary of Administration certified that the state universities and board offices were in compliance by July 29th. So anticipating this question and wanting to know a little bit how it was going anyway, I reached out to a few of our universities to kind of see how are they doing this. I think Emporia State and K-State have both, no longer have their DEI person in employment any longer. Further on K-State, they have had active communication to their employees. They have resources available to deal with any questions, because as you can imagine, there's been a lot of questions on campus. They have a process for dealing with non-compliance, and they've created that and shared, and they even have a frequently asked questions section, so that can be availed easily by the employees. And they have continuing reminders for compliance. Wichita State, I believe their DEI person also handled Veterans Affairs. This person no longer handles DEI. That position is not there, and they've are doing Veteran Affairs, among other things. KU staff who are responsible for DEI have been melded into other student services. KU Med Center had a town hall where they explained, and they said it was a lively town hall. Where they explained that this is the law and how we're going to implement it. So I think that as the months go on, realizing that these are big universities, especially KU and K-State, there may be some issues, but as the board and the board office will immediately jump in to help and correct any deficiencies.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. And I know as the session approaches and as we enter into session, I'm sure questions will continue to arise potentially of the universities. And I think the regents I think our request is that you continue to dive into this and ensure that there is compliance, because one of the allegations was that one of the universities just took the DEI department and just rebranded it. The mission, the structure, and the funding practices continue the same. Members of a certain student body has control of a majority of the student activity fees, and the member of this student body that's deciding these where the funding goes is not elected like it has been traditionally at the university level, like with student government. It is now appointed based on race, sex, and gender identification, et cetera. And I think it's important for us to remember that Martin Luther King challenged that he hoped that one day we'd all be judged on our character and not based on the color of our skin. And just like this last week, and I watched the documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Netflix. I think it's called On the Basis of Sex, and talked about how
Fabulous.
it's actually very empowering. Ruth and I don't probably agree on very much as conservative, and she had a more liberal philosophy, but it was fascinating that she took on the right to equality for both men and women in America through the lens of a man who was not getting the caregiver tax credit. I thought that was fascinating. And so, those are two people who were liberal icons in America, or not, sorry, Ruth was liberal.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Do you have a vision towards that?
In terms of, well, I can tell you this, you're exactly right. 57% of the students in Kansas, I believe, require some kind of student loan. And the average student debt in Kansas is like, I believe, $26,700. So it's a significant student loan. So that it is a significant problem. on that part of your question, I think the best thing we can do for them, if the universities continue to put the pedal down hard on this applied learning, especially the paid applied learning. I mean, that's not coming out of our coffers. That's coming out of these businesses in the particular Wichita, Kansas City, wherever they are. So that's a great partnership that's going to help with that student debt. Like I said, the on-time graduation and the student success initiatives. But what you're talking about is more, how do they find out, avail themselves of more opportunities for scholarships and loans? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, along those lines, and just, you know, as legislators, especially me being now new on Ways and Means, looking at the out years and you know, a lot of these young people, they don't realize all this stuff has to be paid back. And it's easy for colleges, universities, you know, obviously we want our, as many students as we can get, but educating them and helping them understand that all this has to be paid back. And so what does the Board of Regents, what can you do, and what are our universities doing in that particular area to help students, especially when you see what the forecast is? And so when we're talking about, you know, having to cut money and really take a hard look at this, how are we mentoring our young people that when they graduate, they don't have to have hundreds of $1,000s in debt?
You're right. It doesn't seem real when they're taking out their debt. They're just thinking of the next year of college and their big dreams, because for many of them, they've not had to pay debt down in their lives. And so I don't have a good answer for you that other than, and I will look into that more, other than I think it probably needs to start in the high school, the senior year of high school when they're looking for colleges. So maybe financial education about paying back, the amount you have to pay back, the interest rate, things like that. But I can't say I have a good answer for you today.
All right, any final questions? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, and thank you, Kathy, for being here. Just to highlight, kind of to follow up on that question, just more of a comment here, but I think I was not a big fan of the big, beautiful bill, but one piece in that was kind of the opening up of the Pell Grant. And I think for that latter approach of getting certificates and CTEs and kind of building on that career is a great way. So I think we need to make sure we are letting our constituents know about that access and for our Board of Regents. But, you know, education is one of my top priorities, and I would be remiss if I did not have you talk a little bit about, you know, that collaboration, I think, the Legislature and the Board of Regents, and then K-12 on literacy. Would you give us just a little
Yes.
update on that?
Thank you for that question. And I know the Blueprint for Literacy was not funded last year. I have to tell you, I said that sometimes we'll come to you and we'll have to really advocate for something that we think is absolutely necessary. And at least in my mind, that's one of those issues. Let me see. In Kansas, 1 and 3 third graders doesn't read independently, and you think, well, they'll catch up. The problem actually gets worse. The stats are worse by 8th grade. For adults, 54% of the population in Kansas does not read above a 6th grade level. And you think, oh, what's wrong with Kansas? It's a nationwide phenomena. We're actually not at the bottom. We're in the upper half, but we've got to do something about that. They say that between 20 and 2030, we're going to get 55,000 jobs, new jobs in Kansas. And I don't even think that includes Panasonic. And so we've got to be able to fill those jobs. And you're right, Senator Sykes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they all have to be bachelor's degrees. There's all kind of trade jobs that are desperately needed. But of those 55,000, 80% need a college degree or greater. So we've got to figure out this literacy problem, especially with the, one of you talked about it earlier, the enrollment cliff. You know, back in 2007, 2008, not near as many births happened as before. And so now we're getting to the point where that class would be entering college, and there's just not enough of them. So we've got to make sure every student we possibly can is prepared for college. And I don't know how they can prepare for college if they don't have basic literacy skills. So that is something that I'll probably continue to talk about this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was listening to your stats, and I would just, it's more of an encouraging statement. We have 5% African American, 15%, 13% Hispanic, 33% of whites that are coming out of high school ready to advance. We say we're on the higher side of a domestic or a United States statistic that is a failed statistic.
Right.
I would take an aggressive approach. Subtle movements are not working. And taking a real strong look at how we can advance our children is going to be critical, and that weight falls on the Board of Regents. And I would just encourage you to continue to look at these stats and try and make bold moves so we can advance and not fail our children. So
I think that's exactly right, Senator Klemp. And if any of you haven't talked to or met Dr. Cynthia Lane, she has been charged with the Blueprint for Literacy. She was a regent and left her regent position in order to do that. And, you know, I know this much. She can really, it'd be a great opportunity to visit with her a little more and understand what the Blueprint for Literacy is all about and how crucial it is and foundational to everything we're going to do to educate students.
thank you for your willingness to serve too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, any final questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, Regent Moore, for being here and answering some of those questions, and appreciate your desire to see more collaboration between the legislature and the Board of Regents, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
All right, committee, that concludes all of the consideration of appointments by the governor. What is the committee's desires or actions today? Minority Leader Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion that we recommend Alicia Sanchez, Kansas Human Rights Commission, James Sakura, Capers Board of Trustees, Joanne Yoon, Capers Board of Trustees, Brandon Jones, Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission, Monica Holloway, Kansas Developmental Finance Authority, Gordon Langsford III to the University of Kansas Hospital Authority, Bob Kent, Kansas Department of Revenue, Director of Property Evaluation, Kimberly Brown to the Kansas Developmental Finance Authority, Pamela Amar to the Kansas Board of Regents, and Kathy Wolf-Moore to the Kansas Board of Regents to be recommended by confirmation for the full Senate.
All right, you heard a motion to confirm. Is there a second? Vice President Schomburger seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion to confirm all 2 nominees? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, they're all confirmed. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for your willingness to serve. Thank you for taking time to be with us today and answer some of the questions, and I appreciate all of you for truly being willing to serve. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.